Welcome everyone to our fourth webinar in our diversity, equity and inclusion webinar series for the recruitment industry. So far, I thought I'd do a bit of a recap on what the webinars we've done already. So far, we've covered, first of all, why recruiters should care and why anyone in the recruitment industry should care about DE&I. We've looked at the first steps you can take for if you're wanting to embed a DE&I strategy, what that looks like. And we've also looked at how you can harness the power of data to look at what those first steps might look like. Today's topic is on why buy-in is critical to success and how to secure commitment. So first of all, I wanted to introduce our speaker and our co-host. So we've got Chikere, who I'll go to first, and we've also got Jojo, who is our co-host for today. And just a little bit about yourself and also kind of the link to the recruitment industry as well.
Amazing. So excited to be here, Ellie and Jojo. This is really exciting because when I come on these sessions, I know that we are all driving change together. So first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. My name is Chikere Ibokwe, and I'm the founder of Inclusive, which is a DEIB consultancy. And my consultancy is all about change. I focus a lot on awareness, education and action. So do lots of work on allyship, diversity strategies, help organizations have that very, very important conversation. And I'm also the founder of Allyship, which is a community for allies to come together in a safe space. And off the back of that, we also have the Allyship book club. My community is open to everyone. I cannot overemphasize that we need more allies. We need more active allies like every single one of you. So please do reach out to me and join. And in terms of my background, I come from a recruitment background. When I finished university, I fell into recruitment, as you do. And I think for me, using my platform to drive change is really, really important. And as someone who has got recruitment experience, you know, what better to do that? So that's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. And then Jojo, so all throughout kind of the webinar series that we've done so far, we've invited co-hosts who are part of our DE&I committee internally to speak, to share their experiences and ask questions, because we're all going on this learning journey together. We're all at different points. So Jojo, I'd love to hand over to you to introduce yourself as well.
Yes, hello. I'm Jojo Cruz, and I'm so very, very happy to be here and be a part of just all of this amazing hard work that Ellie and Chikere have done so far. A little bit about my background. I come from a sports and academic background in both the States and up north in the UK. And I'm now an SDR at the company that I work for with Ellie as well. And I've always had somewhat of a DE&I background in my academic and my athletic experience. So I felt I wanted to bring those lessons that I've learned and the passion that I have for those topics into my next chapter, which is just being a career-driven woman, you know? So super, super excited and very honored that I get to partake in this today.
Amazing. So the first question I want to ask is around, what is the first step to getting buy-in? Like, who do we need to get buy-in from? What does that look like? And Chikere, I wanted to kind of come to you to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. And this is something I speak to a lot of my clients about. So as you can imagine, I am working with clients who, you know, from the financial services sector or technology sector, and, you know, having that initial conversation about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. I normally speak to, you know, HR professionals more than likely. And it's so important that senior leaders play a crucial role in helping to shape the organizational's culture and values. And when we talk about buy-in, you know, it really is important that senior leaders actively support diversity initiatives, because this really does send out a powerful message that, you know, we mean business, that diversity is a priority for this organization. And I think a lot of the times when I speak to a lot of the HR professionals, they're like, oh, I need to go and speak to senior leaders. Like, yes, you need to go and speak to them, because there's no point us doing all this good work if we don't have that initial buy-in from senior leaders. So definitely senior leadership buy-in is important.
And what does it, what would it look like in terms of going to the senior leadership team and kind of trying to get the buy-in, or if you're already kind of someone that's sat in a kind of a, I'm trying to say, already at the table basically with the leadership team, what can help the conversation there around like the company knowing like why they're doing it, what's kind of going on, what does that look like?
Exactly. And I think, Ellie, I think we've had this conversation before. So, you know, understanding your why, your what, and your how really is important. So why are we having this conversation? Why is this conversation important? And then jumping on to what do we need to achieve and how do we need to achieve it? And I think really understanding that this is not a tick box exercise. We're not just doing this for doing sake because our competitors are doing it, because everyone else is doing it. So I always say to individuals and to organizations, understand your why. So understand your individual why we're doing this, why we're having this conversation, and really understand your collective why, in fact, your organizational why. That really is important as well, because once you do that, and once you understand your why, you can then go to your what. What do we need to achieve and how? How are we going to achieve it? That really is important.
Definitely. Definitely. Just touching a little bit on the why, I feel like, of course, both individual and collective whys need to be discussed. And in terms of discussions, how can you go about having these sometimes viewed as challenging or bold conversations?
I know.
To discuss the why and to get everybody on the same page. What are the barriers for that? Because I know some people feel obviously so passionate about these topics. There's a lot of emotions that come with them, but is there a right and wrong way to have these conversations?
Yeah, definitely. So the way I do it, and this is what I normally say to a lot of the senior leaders that I work with, since 2020, okay, 2020 really has changed the way we speak about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, okay? And as you can see, we are having braver and bolder conversations, right? And it's a case of, you know, as an organization, we need to have these brave and bold conversations. If you look at the next generation, and I talk about the next generation a lot because the next generation are my children, they're my sons, you know, my sons are teenagers. And I see them and I see their friends who are everybody. Their friends are Black and brown and white, everybody having these brave and bold conversations. And if we look at that next generation, so Generation Z, they are digital natives, right? And they have conversations around race and gender and sexuality like it's nothing, okay? And if you think about it, these are the people, okay, who will be coming into your organization. So when they come into your organization or when they come to you, right, you know, are you able to ensure that they work within an organization where they are valued, not just for their education and experience, but because of who they are? Okay. And if you look at the world now, right, we can see that we have to have these conversations, that these younger people are holding us to account. And if you look at what's happening on the global stage, I'm not going to mention any countries, but you know what's going on at the moment. If you look at what's happening, everybody, right, especially these young people, they are, you know, holding governments to account. So these same people will hold senior leaders to account. And I think for me, having conversations around diversity is difficult for a lot of people. So I create those safe spaces, okay, where we can come together and have those conversations. If we're having conversations about our why, you know, it's almost a case of asking both Ellie and yourself, Jojo, why are we having this conversation today? You know, so you thinking about your why. And it's the same for an organization to think about their why. Why are we having this conversation? Is it just a tick box exercise? Or are we having it because we really want to create change? We really want change to happen. So creating that safe space to have these brave and bold conversations are necessary. Okay, so go on other days when we were afraid, you know, we are being held to account and we have to have these conversations.
Absolutely.
But Jojo, you are right. A lot of people are afraid to have these conversations because I speak to them all the time. When I say to them, why are you scared? And like, Chica, I don't want to put my foot in it. It's like, we're all going to make mistakes. We're human, right? But the only way we can have these conversations is if we empower ourselves. And Ellie, you're part of the Allyship Book Club. You know that, don't you? The more you educate yourself, you create safe spaces to have conversations, you listen, the more you probably feel a bit more equipped to have these really important conversations.
Yeah, just to jump in as well, the experience that I've had is before, I think if you feel really naive to the topic, just speaking from experience, like that's when you feel really reluctant to have discussions, and you feel like, what am I going to contribute? What, I'm going to say something wrong, I don't understand the terminology, or what can I possibly add here, or I'm just going to feel really silly. And then the more that I read and the more that I talk, the more I'm like, actually, I have questions. I don't have answers, but I've got questions and I want to discuss them. And I think that I found the education piece is kind of the key to unlocking some of those conversations. And it's really normal to get things wrong. I've got loads of stuff wrong before, and it's I think fail quick, learn quick, or fail quick, learn quicker. Where if you get something wrong, it's actually really people feel comfortable saying sorry all the time, like, don't they? So you say sorry if you accidentally knock into someone or you spill someone's coffee, you just say, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean that, like, and then you don't do it again. I think people, if we ever had that approach of DE&I conversations, where you do just say sorry as soon as you mess up, and then learn as you go, I think that's a better approach, rather than feeling like you're going to be like completely disowned, or you're going to have everyone going like mobbing after you, which
you're going to be cancelled. That's what happens. You get cancelled.
Yeah, exactly. And like there are lines that are drawn, but like the normal day-to-day conversations that people have, if people have like got the right intentions, if they want to learn, they want to say the right thing. Yeah, just wanted to add my two cents in there.
And I totally agree. And I often have people say to me, Chica, where do I start? And I normally say to them, what do you find most difficult? Okay. And I think that's where you need to start, because there's still a lot of people want to stay safe. And I think we've got to recognize that the conversation has moved on. Okay, right. So of course we're still talking about gender, rightly so, and we should still be talking about gender, but we're also talking about race, and we're also talking about neurodiversity, and we're also talking about LGBTQ plus issues, and the list goes on. Okay, so I think for a lot of people, that whole safety, yes, of course we want to feel safe, but we need to ensure that we're having brave and bold conversations. And the only way we can have those brave and bold conversations is if we create those safe spaces, and if we just get educating ourselves. That whole self-education really, really is important.
Kind of a question and a little bit of advice from you as well for myself. These conversations, I completely agree. I think we should be having them. But for me, I know I can come off pretty fiery, pretty passionate. In some instances, even in the past, I felt like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or I don't want to fall into the category of the angry Black American woman that's, feeling all of these emotions. Is there a fine line between having bold and brave and strong conversations, or and also fitting that into kind of a work professional way? Because a lot of people talk about, you have conversations in a professional way, and then you have it in a personal way. And I feel like with these topics, that line gets very blurry.
Definitely.
So what would your advice to be for somebody that's very new in their DE&I journey, has so much to say, but I don't want to come off unprofessional in any of these instances?
Yeah. Well, I would say we always need to remain professional regardless. Okay. We need to have that respect. And if you think about it, what are we teaching people? What are we teaching as an ally, as an active ally? What are we teaching people? So always remain professional in that workspace. But I totally understand how frustrating it can feel for certain groups of people who have experienced oppression all their lives. Okay, that whole historical oppression. So for a lot of those groups, it is frustrating, and a lot of those groups are fed up. Okay, so what I would say is this, okay, especially with me, I guess I'm an educator right? So my space is a safe space. I am, I'm quite lenient, as well. But when I create those safe spaces, I expect you to have done your work as well. Okay. So I'm not there spoon feeding you. If you're coming into my space as an ally, as an active ally, what have you done to educate yourself? I'm not an open book for you to be asking all these questions. It's up to you to go and educate yourself as well. So what I would say is always remain professional, okay, especially in the work environment, really, really important. But for those people who are starting on their journey, please make sure you are doing the work, because what I find is a lot of people are not doing the work that they should be doing. And that can be really, really frustrating. So that's why, just going back to that initial why, what, how, as an individual, know your why are you having this conversation, okay? And then you know your what, and then you know your how. But that whole education piece that you have got to do really, really is important. So that's what I would say about that.
Definitely. No, I really appreciate the feedback. And I think continuing to educate myself in other topics that don't personally affect me is just going to allow me to hone in my feelings and my thoughts when I speak, rather than getting, carried away in the moment. And that's, yeah.
I agree.
Definitely.
And then kind of follow-up question to that, when if we've got the commitment from leaders, we're having kind of these bold and brave conversations that people feel, they've got a space where they can speak and get things wrong, and they can learn, and we've got that kind of culture. What things can leaders do to actually show that commitment? Because I think one thing is, saying that and then everyone starts feeling comfortable. Like what can leaders actually start doing to make sure that it's pretty obvious that it's a priority, it's something that they want to be on the agenda?
Yeah, so a number of things they can do. So first and foremost, lead by example. Okay, so when senior leaders champion diversity initiative, it encourages others within the organizations to follow suit, and surely that's what we want. So in terms of senior leaderships, their actions and behavior serve as a model for everyone within the organization, regardless of their level. And it also reinforces the importance of diversity and creating a more inclusive work environment and workspace. So that whole lead by example is important. And then something that's really, really important is allocate resources. Okay, think about it. As a senior leader, you have the authority and influence to allocate resources. So we're looking at budget, we're looking at staff, we're looking at time, and really do support those diversity efforts and initiative. Because if you think about it, without their buy-in, so without the buy-in of senior leaders, it can be challenging to secure the necessary resources to implement effective diversity programs effectively. And what you probably do see within organization is that you see certain historically marginalized groups taking on the work. So, if you look at ERGs within an organization, employee resource groups, there's always one for women, there's always one for people of color, there's always an LGBTQ plus one. And these groups are really vital to driving these initiatives. But a lot of the people do the work alongside their day job. Okay. A lot of these people are not paid for what they do. So it really is important that senior leaders support that and really, prioritize resources, as I've mentioned before, budget and time. It really is important, because it really does say, listen, we mean business about this. We really want to drive change. So that really is important.
Definitely. I think kind of going on that, because talking about taking some of the physical things that we're talking, or some of the verbal things, that we're discussing, and putting them into physical actions. That's kind of my next question. Of course, we know some of the things, as you mentioned, allocating time and allocating finances towards these DE&I issues and conversations. But what are some of the other steps that we can take towards having these conversations, and then putting the things that we've discussed into actions, especially from somebody that's at an entry-level position or a middle management position? What are some initial steps that you think either generic that apply to most companies, or maybe even in the recruitment space. What are some of the things that we could do to create more safe spaces, and turn these conversations into actions?
Yeah, definitely. So you really got to show that you mean business, okay? And you've really got to steer away from that whole performative allyship. And when I say performative allyship, that's doing an initiative or doing something for showmanship, for showwomanship, for showpersonship, okay? So showing that you really mean business, okay? So for example, allyship, being an active ally, okay? You're an ally for 365 days of the year, not for one day, not for 1 month. Okay. So what are you continually doing to drive change? And I think we've just moved on from June, which we know was History Month, and we had the Pride celebrations on Saturday. And I think when I walked around anyway, I visibly saw rainbow flags everywhere. Merchandise in shops, everywhere you go, you see these things. And I bet you today, when you walk around, it'll be taken away. Okay. So what I'm saying is this, okay, we really need to ensure that whatever we're doing is meaningful, and we are ensuring that we're doing it always. So we're not just saying we want to do this initiative and that initiative, during, I don't know, Pride Month, or during Black History Month, or in March when it's International Women's Day. We're doing it all the time, okay? So it starts with setting the tone. So those senior leaders, it's really important that you make a statement, okay? You've got to make a statement so the organization knows what is happening and what direction it needs to take. And then that education piece. I go on about education a lot because education really is important. I often have people say to me, Chikere, what are you trying to say, that we're uneducated? Yes, I am trying to say that, because education really is important. A lot of people are uneducated about diversity, okay? About having conversations around gender and race and sexual orientation. So that education piece really is important. And people normally say to me, Chikere, where do I start? And I normally say, what do you find most difficult? Okay, so that is one. Secondly, the why comes back into it. So make sure you know your individual why and your collective why, because once you know your why, you sort of like know where you need to go as well. And then we can start talking about strategies. Do you have a diversity strategy? Do you have a roadmap? Have you done a survey? So there's lots of things that you can do to try and help shape it. But something, keep it simple. I'll just say, keep it simple to start with. Understand your why. And then from there, it should take direction. But that whole education piece really, really is important.
Yeah, I like. I've been reading the Simon Sinek Start with the Why, which is like almost like a change management principle, and I really feel like it applies to diversity, equity, inclusion. From everything that we're saying, it really is championing the change through a business, like starting at the top, and then so kind of how Simon Sinek talks about, kind of start with the why. This is something recruiters should be doing with their clients, with their candidates. Why should they spend time talking to them? It's the same, I guess, that they've got to look at within themselves.
Yeah.
For this. And then also, kind of as we're having the conversation around leaders that are championing change and leaders that are championing DE&I, my understanding from all of our conversations we've ever had is that this isn't just within HR. This isn't just your HR leaders or whoever your head of DE&I is. Like, it's not that they've got a responsibility that they will do, but it's the responsibility of every single leader within the organization to be taking that on themselves. It's not something that well, this is just my understanding. But
yeah, no, totally. Do you know something, Ellie? And you know something, I can probably move further ahead as well. And I'll say this is everyone's responsibility.
yeah,
Everyone within the organization's responsibility. And this is why when we talk about education, okay, I think I've spoken to you about the journey that we're all on. I always say to people, we're on a journey, and I talk about this lifelong journey that we are all on, including myself. Okay. And when I talk about this lifelong journey that never ever ends, this journey that really scares me, it's a journey that we are all on, okay? And that journey involves educating ourselves about the basics. So it starts obviously with the why, and then we look at bias, especially in recruitment. As you know, affinity bias is rife in recruitment. And then we look at privilege, okay, and the different types of privilege. And then we look at microaggression. So if we look at microaggression in the workplace, you know, a bit of banter, jokes, somebody says something that's inappropriate and everybody's laughing about it. So we've got to look at that. And then obviously we look at the concept of allyship and what it means and as an ally. And then after the sessions, we look at that, your continual learning as an ally, but also as a recruiter, people in recruitment, firms. It really is important that, you know, I talk about listening as well, just learning to listen, being able to have those brave and bold conversations with your employees, with your candidates, with your clients, you know, not feeling afraid to ask questions, even though, you know, you may ask somebody with a historically marginalized identity a question. That person might say, you might ask me, and I might say, you know, Ellie, Jojo, go and educate yourself. You know, really is important. You can't expect me to spoon feed you. So asking questions is really, really important. And I think for me, something that's really important is engage outside your circle. There's an exercise I normally do in one of my sessions where I ask people to, you know, put down 10 of their friends, you know, on a sheet of paper, you know, have a look at 10 of your friends. Are they people just like you, or do you engage outside of your circle? It's so important to have such a diverse group of people. And I think I've always been really lucky. I've always had just a really diverse group of people that I've known from university, from where I've worked, but a lot of people I've noticed just don't have that, you know, and it really is important to engage outside of your circle. And you know something, you know, bring diversity to the table. Initially start to have these conversations, because more than likely your clients are saying to you, you know, we need more diverse talent in the business. We need more diverse shortlists. These are the conversations that are being had. Okay. And can you have these conversations? Do you shy away? Do you feel comfortable? So these are the kind of things you need to be asking yourself. So yeah, the conversation around diversity is a conversation we're going to be having for a long, long time to come. And as you can see, the conversation's moving on. Okay. Yeah. It's becoming even bolder than it was in 2020.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is definitely the case, like I said, with the new generation and the conversations that, at least around the younger people, making myself feel a bit old, but the younger people that I hang around with or that are in my family, their expectations are very high in comparison to maybe what mine were when I was at the age of like, well, how do you not know that? Everyone knows that. Like they are all talking, they're educating themselves, aren't they, through conversation?
Totally.
They're the best example of how it can be done.
Totally. And it's so funny, just quickly, Ellie, if you look at those younger people, you know, if you look at the music they listen to, the culture they interact with, you know, it's outside of their culture, and, you know, they definitely get it. And just another really quick thing as well is, this is showing my age now. I remember when I left university, there was a thing called Milk Round. So what would happen is you would go to almost like a graduate careers fair, and you see all these big organizations, not going to mention any, but, you know, the employers of choice, they'll be all there, you know, and you would go up to them and hopefully try and get yourself a graduate job. And you know something, it's so different now. So that next generation we're talking about, Generation Z, right? During interviews, and these are my colleagues in the recruitment space telling me this, they will ask you, what are you doing when it comes to diversity? They're asking you questions. They're looking at your website. They're looking at your leadership team. They're looking to see, you know, diversity across the board. For these young people, you know, the next generation, who are everybody, okay, are holding organizations to account. So are you ready to have these diversity conversations?
Yeah.
Very proud of my generation. I'm just at the cutoff, but I completely agree, especially as a lot of these senior leaders start to filter out through retirement. Businesses need to be ready for all of the wave of new people coming in. I mean, it's like you said, like it's normal conversation to talk about things that 10, 20 years ago were complete taboo topics.
Exactly.
I think it's such a beautiful change. And I think I definitely agree that it trickles down from the top, but I do still think that I know that the senior leaders have so much going on in terms of just making sure the day-to-day of the business runs, but I still think there's a lot of work, especially when things come up and people reach out to senior leaders and their first question is, well, what do you think should happen? I've been asked that question and I don't know how to answer. I've mustered up the courage to even come and confide in you about an experience that upset me in some form of way that was related to DE&I. And now it's like, I'm also supposed to create the solution. What would you say a response for that could be? Or what would you say, you know, what should I then do in terms of should I brainstorm and come back with them with a
Do you know what I think? And this is a really, really good question, Jojo. And I think that the problem is a lot of senior leaders are the same, aren't they? Okay, we're not going to mention, but a lot of senior leaders belong to a majority group. So they're all the same. Okay. And these are the senior leaders I have conversations with all the time. So I'm creating these really safe spaces and they're coming out with things. Okay. They're coming out with things that are quite problematic. Okay. And the problem is a lot of them just don't understand. Okay. So you go in to them with an issue and they're saying, they're turning it around saying, what do you think you should do, Ellie? Jojo, rather. They're saying that because they just don't know what to do. Okay. And again, I would say the time has changed. The time has moved on for you as a leader not to know what to do. Okay. You have got to go and put the work in and find out. Have these conversations and find out, okay? But we must also remember that a lot of these leaders, we need them, right? Because they are part of the majority group. They're in position of power and privilege and they can enact change. And this is why when I speak to these leaders, we do need them. And when we have these diversity conversations, remember what we said earlier, it's about everybody, right? It's about making sure that everybody's part of the conversation because everyone will enact change. And especially the kind of work that I do, my work is not about excluding anybody. It's about making sure that we get more allies, more active allies into the mix to have these really important conversations. Okay. So for senior leaders, I would say they really do need to start with educating themselves. A really great book that I normally tell senior leaders to read is the Matthew Syed book, The Power of Diverse Thinking. That's really awesome book. To get themselves started with. It talks about why, and it's a great book for recruiters as well, because it talks about why the CIA found it really difficult to capture Osama bin Laden. Okay, so if you imagine a lot of the CIA were in Middletown, America, same kind of people, went to the same colleges, same community. Where was Osama bin Laden? He was somewhere in Afghanistan or somewhere. Okay. Of course, they're not going to be able to capture him. They didn't know anything about the culture or anything. So that's a really great book to get reading. And also, we need to read about history as well, right? Because history really is shaping, especially our country, United Kingdom. If you look at the history of the United Kingdom, we look at empire, that does really shape the way the UK is today. So a great podcast to listen to is the Empire podcast. And that is, oh my goodness, that's the most awesome podcast I have listened to. It's just phenomenal. So I would definitely mention that. But Jojo, if you go and speak to a senior leader and they're like, what do you think we should do? I think there's a big issue there. Do you see what I mean? There's a big issue.
Yeah. I mean, of course, in the moment you want to be a good employee and you do really want to have solutions in your head, but I don't know how to encourage people to include me in scenarios that are different than me. I mean, I know being someone that is typically different in the scenarios that I enter in, I know I'm going to have to make more of an effort automatically to get to know people. But like you said, some people that only associate with individuals that are very similar to them or from similar backgrounds to them, they're not going to have that natural instinct of, okay, let me try a little harder because we have differences in background and we have differences in culture. But, you know, so I completely
Totally. Because we still have people talking about, you know, the norm and what's normal. I had a conversation with somebody last week and they were talking about normal. And I was like, could you explain to me normal? What does that mean? You know, there's no normal anymore, is there?
No.
What is, you know,
standard.
there's no,
Everybody is included. That's
exactly. And I really got him thinking. I was asking him, explain to me what you mean by explain to me what you mean by normal. Explain that to me. And also with organizations, think about it, surely the need to be representative is important. Are you, think about the community you serve, who are probably everybody. Are you, if I had to look at your workforce, are you representative of the community that you serve? And you've got to remember, we are now, because I do this all the time, and you, Ellie, both you and Jojo probably do this as well. With organizations, I'm sorry, I would boycott an organization if I see any hint of, discrimination, oppression, homophobia, sexism, racism. I'm not using you anymore. Okay. And more people are doing that. Okay. More people are doing that. So it's a case of, you've got to be careful, especially if, as recruitment business, because if I was an organization and I needed you to recruit for a role I had, you know what I'll be doing? I'll be having a look at your website. I'll be having a look at your consultants. I'll be having a look at your senior leadership team. And if I don't see representation, and I know not all representation is visible, but if I don't see the easy representation that I see, I will not be using you, or if I don't even see a statement on your website that tells me that you value diversity and maybe even talks about your journey, I will not be using you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're definitely going in that direction. I saw maybe a month ago, or maybe 2 now, one of the biggest recruitment agencies in the UK, Hayes, have invested in Visida Consulting, which is a DE&I consultant. That's the ultimate show of buy-in, isn't it? Like, when you're actually putting your money where your mouth is, it's a priority.
Totally.
On the agenda.
Totally.
Things like that will take time to filter through a company, but that's the direction that I'm seeing in the enterprise space, is the reality of this is what we need to be doing as a minimum to be differentiating ourselves from our competitors, to be actually offering more than just like the workforce talent service that we're providing.
Totally
is real, and we are representing, and we're doing the absolute most. And so I've definitely seen a shift in I can't even really speak for the enterprise space, but that's the shift that I'm seeing, is that is the direction we seem to be going, is there is DE&I is a priority.
I totally agree, Ellie. And what does that tell you? That shows, that they're saying we mean business. Okay. And you are right. It will take a while to trickle down. But remember, we talk about the journey. Change is not going to happen overnight, but it shows that we are doing something to create change. And I think for me, that's really, really important. And we need more businesses to invest in things like that.
Yeah, I fully agree. Jodie, did you have any final questions at all?
No, I don't. It's so dreamy listening to you speak, Chikere. Like, just I can hear all of the wisdom and the work that you've done to educate yourself on this topic, and it's just very inspiring listening to you just so effortlessly, it seems, answer all of my questions. So I so appreciate being able to just speak with you, really.
No, and I just want to say, I just appreciate both Ellie and yourself, Jojo, and I think we need more people like both of you, who are not afraid, who use your platform to create change. You're amplifying my voice, and I think this is really, really important. We need more people to not be afraid, more people to be on that journey, more people to challenge others, because that's the only way we can, create change and definitely bring diversity to the table. And I talk about allyship because you know how passionate I am about allyship. What I am doing, I'm building a community of allies. So if anybody is interested in any of the allyship workshop, anybody who wants to be, come on that journey, my space is a welcoming space. My space welcomes everybody. And I need more active allies like Ellie, like Jojo, and like every single one of you listeners who are listening today. We need more people like you.
I'll link everything that we've discussed in terms of resources on the post that we do for this, and in the description for the videos. So all the books, the allyship book club, your obviously your LinkedIn as well, Chikere, and the podcast and books, make sure that they're all in there. So everyone has it at their fingertips. It's a place. If your question is where do I start, that's a place to start. And of course, just regurgitating what you've already said, but wherever you feel you're you don't feel as confident speaking about, or you feel like, actually, I'm going to shy away from this conversation because I don't really know about it.
Exactly.
That's where you can start having conversations, start having the bold and brave conversations.
I agree.
It's tricky. You will learn. It's fine. You'll make mistakes. It's normal. We're human. We're not robots, and that's okay, as long as, we've got intentions. I just want to say a massive thank you for joining us today and everything that you're doing, because it's amazing. And like Joe said, it's super, super inspiring, and obviously we're wanting to do as much as possible, and I really appreciate you holding us to account as well, and making sure that we're doing everything that we can. It's really important, and I feel like it's actually helped me on my journey a huge amount. I don't think I would be here without the conversations that we had kind of at the back end of last year as well. So really appreciate that, and thank you for today as well.
No worry. Thank you both so much for having me, and just continue to be the awesome active allies that you both are. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you on the next podcast, the next webinar, which is all around accessibility and accessible recruiting. Amazing.
Thank you. Bye.